Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry, I haven't been doing much online, but I've been busy writing books and preparing for this Surrendered conference that I'm ministering in this weekend in Cypress, Texas. It's been amazing so far. We've had last night and today's services and getting ready to head to tonight's service. You see, God dropped the word surrendered in my mind about 5 months ago, and I started studying it. And when I first went to Bible Gateway and hit the word surrendered in the search portion of the scripture or engine, I found out that the word surrendered isn't even in the Bible. The act of surrendering is all over the Bible, but the word surrendered isn't in the Bible. And then I thought about, I think it's Genesis 22:5, where it says where Enoch walked with God. And I thought it doesn't tell us about his surrendering process. But in order for him to have walked with God and for him to have walked off one day with God, and he just was not, there had to have been some surrender that had gone on there. So through this process, I have found that surrendering, God just took me to a new level with him because I didn't really understand what being surrendered meant. You see, it means different things to different people. For me, being surrendered means I'm sold out. I work for God with everything I've got. You see, if we don't sell out to God or surrender everything to God, someday he may be having a meeting and the devil may walk in, like with Job. And Satan may be in that meeting and God may look at him and say, "Hey, I was just wondering. I got this servant down on earth that really loves me. Have you ever considered them?" And I can hear the devil saying, like he said to God then, "Yeah, but I can't get to them because you've got this fence up around them. You take that fence down and let's see what they're made of. They won't worship you. They won't serve you." But I'd like to think that, God took down the fence on me because while I was serving him and worshiping him in church, I wasn't sold out to him. I wasn't doing it with my whole heart. And now I am. Because you see, the devil cleared my decks. He cleaned me out so that there were no distractions so that I could easily work for God and focus on God. Think about that a while. So in this surrendering process, God's really worked me over. And yesterday, as I was leaving Houston to come out here, the pastor's wife called me and asked me, "Is there some verses? We need a passage of scripture." And so I said, "Give me 5 minutes and let me get back to you." So I started looking, and I found a verse. Judges 6:14-15. "And the Lord looked upon him and said, Go in this thy might, and thou shalt save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have not I sent thee? And he said unto him, O my Lord, wherewith shall I save Israel? Behold, my family is poor in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house." Sounds just like us. But what it got me was it says God looked at him. So God looks at us, okay? And then God says, you need to go in your own might. You've got to go even if you don't feel me. You've got to go whether it makes sense or not, because I've told you. And then God says, and thou shalt save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. And then God says, haven't I sent you? In other words, shouldn't that be enough for you that I sent you? And then Proverbs 23:7. For as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, saith he to thee. But his heart is not with thee. You see, we've got to get it in our heart. When we get it in our heart and we give God our whole heart, then we can go. Then we can do what God has asked us. Because Acts 1:8 tells us very simply, go. Well, why aren't we going? Why aren't we walking across the street to invite our neighbors? Why aren't we showing up to pray at the church when they ask for us to? And why aren't we showing up to pray when they don't ask us to? If we know somebody who can let us into a prayer room. Why aren't we hitting our knees in our closets? We want to see the world change. We want to see revival. Well, it's going to take the Christians to get right with God first. We've got to be purified and sanctified, cleansed and holy. We've got to be purged with hyssop before God. And then one morning after I'd been writing for 20 some hours, I'd been up, I believe, and I went to bed and I was praying, asking God to just let me go to sleep. Please let me go to sleep. And God gave me this poem. And believe me, it was God, because I was so tired. Being surrendered, you see, I now walk with a limp. My limp is not a visible limp. It's a limp from being broken on the potter's wheel. Then with loving hands he reconstructed me in his image. Being surrendered, I now walk with a limp. My limp causes me to worship. It is a limp that took me to a potter's wheel to learn how to worship in brokenness. Then with loving hands he began to fashion me after his image. Being surrendered, you see, I now walk with a limp. My limp is what I'm thankful for today. It's a limp that brought me into a close relationship with Jesus. Then with loving hands he kept molding me until I was the vessel he could use. Being surrendered, I now walk with a limp. My limp is what makes me into his image. It's a limp that taught me he restoreth my soul in paths of righteousness. Then with loving hands he molded me until he could see himself in me. Being surrendered, I now walk with a limp. Do you walk with a limp? Do you know how to worship in brokenness? Do you know how to let God mold you on the potter's wheel? Do you know how to pray until you touch the throne of God? Do you know how to pray for people until it really hurts? Think about that. Y'all have a blessed day.